My mom said that sentence while I was on the hospital floor screaming through contractions, Wittenkine. Not quietly, not apologetically, not even with hesitation. Just cold, flat, like she was reminding me to buy milk on the way home. You can have another baby next year, Ava, but your sister only gets one master's graduation. The nurse standing beside me actually froze. I remember that part clearly. The room smelled like antiseptic and coffee. The heart monitor beside me kept beeping too fast. My husband Ethan was gripping my hand so hard his knuckles had gone white. And my mother, my own mother, was arguing with me because I canceled the graduation after party she planned to host at my house while I was in labor delivering my daughter. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Because I'm going to be honest with you, that was the exact moment something inside me broke. But before I tell you how my family destroyed my relationship with them over a single day, you need to understand what my sister meant to my parents and what I never meant to them. So if you've ever felt like the backup child in your family, the one expected to sacrifice everything quietly, you're going to understand this story better than anyone. And before we begin, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I read every comment. Now let me take you back 3 months before my daughter was born, before the hospital, before the screaming, before my mother chose a graduation party over me. Back when I still believed family would show up when it mattered. My name is Ava Mercer. I was 28 years old and 8 months pregnant when my mother started planning my sister's graduation party inside my house without asking me. At first, I thought it was harmless. My younger sister Lily was graduating with her master's degree in communications from Northbridge University. My parents treated it like she'd won a Nobel Prize. My mother cried every time she talked about it. Dad kept saying things like, "Our little genius is finally making us proud. Making us proud. Not we're proud of both our daughters. Not look how far both of you came. Just Lily. Always Lily." Growing up, she was the miracle child, the brilliant one, the beautiful one, the one with potential. I was the practical daughter, the dependable one, the one who cooked dinner when mom worked late, the one who stayed home during college because dad's business struggled, the one who took care of grandma during chemo, while Lily studied abroad in Italy and posted beach photos with captions about finding herself. And somehow, I still convinced myself my parents loved us equally. Isn't that embarrassing? How long we can lie to ourselves just to protect the image of family in our heads. Anyway, one Sunday afternoon, Mom showed up at my house carrying 3 giant folders, a notebook, and paint samples. I was folding baby clothes on the couch, tiny pink socks, little yellow onesies, baby blankets my mother-in-law had sewn herself. Mom barely looked at them. She walked straight into my kitchen and spread papers across the counter. "Okay," she said excitedly. "I think the dessert table should go near the patio doors." I blinked at her. "The what?" "For Lily's graduation after party." I laughed softly because I genuinely thought she was joking. "You're hosting it at your place, honey," she said. "You have the biggest backyard." I stared at her. "Mom, I'm due in 3 weeks." She waved her hand dismissively. "Babies are unpredictable. You'll probably deliver late anyway." That should have been my first warning. Not concern for me, not excitement for the baby, just inconvenience calculations. I set the folded blanket down carefully. "You never asked me." Her smile faded slightly. "Well, we assumed." There's something deeply irritating about the word assumed. People use it when they know they crossed a line but want to make you feel unreasonable for noticing. I stood slowly because my back hurt constantly by then. I don't think hosting 60 people here right before giving birth is a good idea. Mom looked genuinely annoyed. "It's one evening, Ava. One evening." That phrase followed me my whole life. Watch Lily's dog for one evening. Give Lily your room for one evening. Loan Lily your car for one evening. Miss your birthday dinner for one evening because Lily had a debate competition. Every sacrifice was temporary, until I realized my entire life had become temporary accommodations for someone else. Mom kept talking. "Your father already invited relatives from out of state." "Already?" "Yes, because we thought you'd support your sister." There it was, support. That family word that secretly means, do what we want or we'll call you selfish. I rubbed my stomach slowly. The baby kicked hard against my ribs. Ethan walked in from the garage carrying grocery bags just in time to hear Mom say, "Honestly, Ava, this is Lily's moment." Ethan set the bags down carefully. "What's going on?" Mom smiled instantly, that fake polite smile mothers use around sons-in-law when they don't want to look controlling. "We're just discussing the graduation party. At our house?" Ethan asked. Mom's smile tightened. "Yes." He looked at me first, not at her. That's one of the first things I loved about Ethan. He always looked at me first. Like my opinion mattered, like I mattered. She doesn't look happy about that, he said calmly. Mom crossed her arms. She's overreacting because of hormones. I hate that sentence. I swear women can be bleeding, vomiting, half-conscious, and carrying another human being inside them, and someone will still call them emotional for having boundaries. Ethan's jaw flexed slightly. Ava doesn't need stress right now. Mom sighed dramatically. You know, when I was pregnant, I still hosted Thanksgiving for 20 people. Congratulations. Would you like a medal for suffering unnecessarily? Instead, I just said, I need to think about it. Mom smiled instantly because she thought that meant yes. Then she kissed my forehead and said, I knew you wouldn't ruin this for your sister. Ruin. Notice that wording. Not. I knew you'd help, but I knew you wouldn't ruin it. The manipulation was so automatic she probably didn't even hear herself anymore. After she left, Ethan sat beside me quietly. You don't want this party here. It wasn't a question. I shook my head. No. Then say no. I stared down at my stomach. It sounds simple when healthy people say it. Just say no. But children raised in emotionally uneven families know the truth. Sometimes saying no feels like detonating a bomb, especially when you spent your entire life being rewarded for obedience. I don't want another fight, I whispered. Ethan brushed hair behind my ear gently. Baby, I think you've been avoiding fights your whole life. That sentence stayed with me because he was right. I avoided conflict so expertly that people stopped seeing me as a person with needs at all. I became convenient, and convenient daughters get used until they disappear. 2 weeks later, Mom returned with Lily. That was intentional. My mother always brought Lily when she wanted leverage. Lily walked in wearing a cream-colored coat that probably cost more than our monthly electric bill. She looked beautiful, perfect makeup, perfect smile. Even pregnant and swollen and exhausted, I still felt 12 years old around her sometimes. Hi, Ava, she sang dramatically. How's my favorite niece? She touched my stomach for exactly 2 seconds before pulling out party invitations from her purse. Look what Mom designed. Gold lettering, professional printing, my address at the bottom. I stared at it. My address, without permission. My chest tightened. Lily, already printed these? Well, obviously, she laughed. People needed notice. I looked at Mom. You told everyone before asking me. Mom immediately got defensive. Oh my God, Ava, stop acting like this is some huge betrayal. Ethan came downstairs halfway through the argument. He saw the invitations in my hand and immediately understood. What are those? Graduation invitations, Lily said brightly. At our house? Mom sighed loudly again. Why is everyone making this difficult? Because normal people ask before volunteering someone's home while they're about to give birth. That's why. Ethan took one invitation from my hand slowly. Then he looked at the date, the exact weekend of my due date. He looked back at them. You scheduled this during her delivery week. Well, babies don't arrive exactly on schedule, Mom snapped. Ethan's voice stayed calm. But they can. Lily rolled her eyes. You guys are acting like Ava's the first woman to ever have a baby. There are sentences people say casually that reveal everything about them. That was one of them. Not concern, not empathy, just irritation that my childbirth might interfere with her celebration. I stood there silently while something ugly started forming in my chest. Not anger yet, recognition, that cold realization that someone genuinely does not care about your well-being if it conflicts with their convenience. On the worst part, I think Lily truly believed she was the victim. That's what happens when a family builds one child like royalty. They stop hearing the word no as a boundary. They hear it as cruelty. Mom stepped closer to me. Listen carefully, Ava. Your sister worked hard for this. We already spent money. Relatives already booked hotels. Don't embarrass this family over pregnancy emotions. Pregnancy emotions, not labor, not childbirth. Emotions. I looked down at the invitation again, then at my own house, the nursery upstairs, the hospital bag by the stairs, the tiny baby monitor still sitting unopened on the dining table. And suddenly I had this horrible thought. If I went into labor during that party, they would still make it about Lily. The terrifying thing is, I knew that instinctively. Have you ever known something painful about your family long before you admitted it out loud? Because deep down, I think I always knew where I ranked. I just didn't want to say it. 3 days later, I woke up at 2:14 a.m. with sharp cramps. At first, I thought it was false labor. Then another contraction hit hard enough to make me grab the bathroom sink. Ethan woke instantly. Ava? I think it's happening. Suddenly, everything moved fast. Hospital bags, phone chargers, documents, car keys. The contractions came closer together as Ethan drove through empty streets. Rain hammered the windshield. I remember gripping the dashboard, whispering, "Not yet, please, not yet." Not because I feared childbirth, because Lily's graduation was the next morning, and somewhere deep inside me, I already knew my family would make me regret going into labor at the wrong time. That realization alone should tell you everything about how I grew up. At 4:38 a.m., my doctor confirmed I was in active labor. Ethan called my parents from the hallway. I heard his voice through the partially open door. "Yeah, she's in labor." Pause. Then another pause. His expression changed. Confusion first. Then disbelief. "What do you mean you already left for the graduation?" My stomach dropped. I couldn't hear Mom clearly through the phone, but I heard Ethan say, "She's your daughter." Long silence. Then, "No. No, I don't think that's normal at all." When he came back into the room, his face looked different. Controlled. The way people look when they don't want to upset you further. "What did she say?" Ethan hesitated. Then finally, "Your mom said the ceremony starts in 2 hours and Lily would be devastated if they missed it." I stared at him. Even through contractions, even through pain. I remember feeling strangely calm, like something finally clicked into place. Not shock, confirmation. And then my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "We'll come after the ceremony. Don't create drama today. This is important for your sister." I read it twice. Then another contraction ripped through me so hard I nearly screamed. And somewhere across town, my family was picking graduation outfits while I prepared to deliver my daughter alone. By 8:12 that morning, my contractions were less than 4 minutes apart. The hospital room had gone from quiet to chaotic. Machines beeped constantly. Nurses moved in and out, carrying trays and paperwork. Someone adjusted my IV while another nurse asked me questions I could barely process. And through all of it, I kept staring at my phone, waiting. Not because I needed my parents there, not anymore, but because some pathetic little part of me still believed they would realize how insane this was and turn the car around. That's the worst thing about being emotionally neglected by people you love. Even after they disappoint you 100 times, you still hope the 101st will be different. Another contraction hit. I doubled forward, gripping the bed rail so hard my nails bent backward. Ethan immediately stood beside me. "I'm here. Breathe, baby. Look at me." His hand stayed on my shoulder the entire time, steady, grounding, real. I focused on his voice while the pain ripped through my spine. Then my phone buzzed again. A photo. My mother had sent a picture of Lily in her graduation robe. Caption, "Doesn't she look beautiful today?" I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because something inside me finally cracked hard enough to become absurd. I was in labor, attached to monitors, barely able to breathe, and my mother was sending me graduation photos like I was missing brunch. Ethan saw the message. His jaw tightened instantly. He took the phone from my hand and locked it. "You don't need this right now." But I did need it. Not the cruelty, the clarity. That message removed the final excuse I'd spent my whole life making for them. Because sometimes people show you exactly who they are at the exact moment you can no longer survive pretending otherwise. If your family treated you like this, would you keep forgiving them? Or would this be the moment you finally stopped? Because I wish I could tell you I exploded immediately, that I stood up and screamed and cut everyone off right there. But trauma doesn't work like that. People raised to prioritize everyone else don't become strong overnight. First, they break. Then they learn. At 9:30 a.m., Lily called me, not to ask how I was, not to ask if the baby was okay. Her first sentence was, "Mom said, you're upset." Upset. Like I was annoyed over dinner reservations instead of being abandoned during childbirth. I closed my eyes. "I'm in labor, Lily." "I know," she said impatiently, "but this graduation has been planned for years." Another contraction hit. I couldn't answer for several seconds. When the pain passed, I whispered, "You couldn't come to the hospital first." "Ava, stop making this about you." That sentence, God, that sentence followed me my entire childhood. When Lily got accepted into summer programs while I stayed home working part-time, "Stop making this about you." When my birthday dinner got canceled because Lily had a panic attack over exams, "Stop making this about you." When Dad used my college savings to help pay for Lily's apartment near campus, "Stop making this about you." Eventually, you hear it enough times that you stop believing your pain deserves space at all. I turned my face toward the window. Rain streaked the glass in crooked lines. I'm literally having a baby right now, and I'm literally graduating today. She sounded genuinely irritated, like my labor was terrible timing for her. Then she added the sentence that finally made Ethan lose patience. You can deliver another baby next year. I only graduate once. Ethan snatched the phone from my hand so fast it startled even me. You need to stop talking, he said coldly. Lily scoffed. Excuse me, she's in labor. And Ethan went silent for 2 full seconds. That silence scared me more than yelling would have, because Ethan almost never got angry. Then he said quietly, Do not contact her again today, and hung up. The room went still except for the monitor beeping beside me. I stared at him. I'm sorry, he said immediately. No, I whispered. Then suddenly tears flooded down my face so hard I couldn't stop them. Not because of the pain, because hearing someone defend me felt unfamiliar enough to hurt. That's the part people don't understand about emotionally uneven families. The neglected child becomes so accustomed to being dismissed that basic protection feels overwhelming. Ethan climbed onto the side of the bed carefully and held my face in his hands. Listen to me. I tried to breathe through another contraction. You are not difficult. You are not selfish. And none of this is normal. I started crying harder, because deep down, I think I needed someone to finally say it out loud. Around noon, my mother-in-law Diane arrived at the hospital, carrying snacks, extra clothes, and 3 different phone chargers. She kissed my forehead immediately. How's my girl? My girl. Not obligation, not inconvenience, just love, simple, warm, easy. I almost cried again. Diane sat beside me and rubbed my arm gently, while Ethan spoke quietly with the doctor. You focus on this baby, she whispered. Nothing else matters today. Nothing else matters today. Such a normal sentence, and yet hearing it felt revolutionary. Meanwhile, my actual mother was probably pinning graduation decorations onto folding tables. At 1:47 p.m., Mom finally called. I answered because despite everything, some part of me still wanted her to choose me. The first thing I heard was loud music and people talking. Not hospital sounds, party sounds. Hi, honey, she said distractedly. Honey, that fake sweetness people use when they know they've done something terrible. You're at the restaurant already? Well, yes, everyone came straight after the ceremony. I stared at the ceiling. You're hosting the party right now? Just temporarily, she said quickly, until people head to your place later. My entire body went cold. My place? Yes. Your father and cousins are already setting up the backyard. I sat upright despite the pain. What? Mom sounded annoyed now. Don't start this again, I said. I didn't want the party at my house. Well, we already spent money. Another contraction tore through me before I could answer. I gasped hard enough that the nurse immediately turned toward me. Mom heard it too. Then she sighed. Actually sighed. Ava, please don't do this today. Do this. As though childbirth itself was me being dramatic. The nurse standing nearby looked horrified. I remember that clearly. She tried not to react, but she looked genuinely disturbed, and suddenly I felt embarrassed. Not because of labor, because strangers were witnessing how little my own family valued me. I whispered into the phone, Mom, I'm begging you, don't throw a party at my house today. There was a pause, then her voice hardened completely. Your sister deserves one perfect day. And there it was again. The same family equation that had existed my entire life. Lily's happiness outweighed my pain every single time. Even childbirth, especially childbirth, because childbirth interrupted her spotlight. I looked at Ethan, then at Diane, then around the hospital room, and for the first time in my entire life, I heard my own voice clearly. No. Mom went silent. No party, I repeated. Ava, I said no. You are being unbelievably selfish right now. The nurse actually stopped typing. Mom kept going. Relatives are already expecting to come. Then tell them not to. Your father rented tables. I don't care. You're humiliating this family. I laughed once, short, broken. You left your daughter alone in labor for a graduation party. Silence. Then the coldest sentence she'd said all day. You're overreacting because Ethan babies you. I felt something inside me detach emotionally at that moment, like a rope snapping, because people who truly love you don't weaponize your support system against you. They don't resent you for finally being treated well. I spoke slowly. If anyone enters my house today, I'll have them removed. Then I hung up. My hands shook violently afterward, not from fear, from adrenaline, from finally saying no after an entire lifetime of swallowing it. And honestly, it terrified me. Have you ever stood up to someone who controlled you emotionally for years? Your whole body reacts like danger is coming? Because for people like us, boundaries feel unsafe at first. 20 minutes later, Dad called, not to ask how I was, not to check on the baby. His first sentence was, "What the hell is wrong with you?" I closed my eyes. "There's not going to be a party at my house." "Do you know how much money we spent? I'm in labor, and Lily is graduating." Like those events held equal weight, like childbirth was competing with a ceremony. I heard relatives talking loudly in the background, someone laughing, glasses clinking. My family was celebrating while I screamed through contractions. Dad lowered his voice. "Everyone already knows about the after party. Then tell them plans changed. You're embarrassing us." There it was again. Not concern, image. Families like mine worship appearances more than feelings. As long as everything looked loving, they didn't care what actually happened privately. I whispered, "You chose Lily over me again." Dad immediately got angry. "This isn't about favorites. Then why aren't you here?" Silence. Heavy silence. Because some questions expose truths people can't defend. Then he snapped. "For once in your life, stop competing with your sister." Competing. I almost laughed again. Do you know how insane it is to accuse a woman in labor of competing for attention? But that's how favoritism works. The neglected child becomes dramatic simply for wanting equal care. Dad kept talking. "You've always resented Lily because she succeeded." That one hurt. Not because it was true, because they genuinely believed it. They interpreted my pain as jealousy because acknowledging the truth would force them to face themselves. "I'm done arguing," I whispered. Then I hung up too. Ethan took my phone after that. Enough. And honestly, I let him, because I was exhausted, not just physically, emotionally, spiritually, the kind of tired you feel when you finally stop fighting for people to love you correctly. At 6:04 p.m., after 14 hours of labor, my daughter was born. Everything else disappeared the second I heard her cry. The room blurred instantly through tears. The nurse placed her against my chest, tiny, warm, red-faced, perfect. My baby girl, Olivia Grace Mercer. Ethan cried harder than I did, actual tears rolling down his face while he kissed my forehead over and over, whispering, "You did it. You did it. She's beautiful." And for a little while, nothing else mattered. Not Lily, not my parents, not the party, just us, just this tiny human breathing softly against my chest. Diane took photos quietly from the corner while smiling through tears. The nurse dimmed the lights. Outside the hospital window, the rain had finally stopped. Peace, real peace. Then my phone buzzed again. Ethan saw my expression immediately. "Don't." But I looked anyway. A family group photo. Everyone smiling in my backyard. My backyard. Under string lights. At my house. Caption from Mom. "Family is everything." I stared at the image so long my vision blurred. They did it anyway. They ignored me completely. Ignored my boundary. Ignored my labor. Ignored my home. And somehow, that picture hurt more than them missing the birth. Because it proved something devastating. My absence didn't matter to them at all. They didn't need me there. They just needed access to what I provided. The house, the space, the convenience. Not me. Never me. And while I sat in a hospital bed holding my newborn daughter, my family smiled for photos, pretending everything was perfect. The morning after Olivia was born, I woke up to 37 unread messages. Not one of them asked how I was recovering. Most were relatives thanking me for the beautiful party. One aunt wrote, "Your mother worked so hard putting everything together. You should be proud of your sister." Another said, "Sorry you couldn't make it after all the planning." Couldn't make it. Like I skipped my own backyard party for fun instead of delivering a human being. I stared at the messages while Olivia slept beside me in the hospital bassinet. Tiny fingers curled near her cheeks. Soft breathing, perfect little sighs. And all I could think was, if I ever make this child feel the way my parents made me feel, I will have failed her completely. That realization hit me harder than labor did, because suddenly this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about what kind of mother I wanted to become, and what kind of family I refused to recreate. Ethan walked back into the room carrying coffee. He looked exhausted, wrinkled clothes, dark circles under his eyes, hair messy from sleeping in a hospital chair. But the second he looked at Olivia, his whole face softened. "How are my girls?" My girls. Such a small sentence. Such a massive difference. I started crying again before I could stop myself. Ethan immediately sat beside me. "What happened?" I handed him my phone silently. He scrolled through the messages slowly, His expression changed line by line. Then he reached the family group photo, the one from my backyard, the one taken under the patio lights Ethan and I installed ourselves the previous summer. I watched his jaw tighten. They actually went to the house. I nodded once. They used the spare key. His face went still, not angry, worse, disappointed. And if you've ever seen a calm person truly disappointed in someone, you know how heavy that silence feels. Ethan locked the phone and set it face down. Okay? That was all he said. Okay. But something in his voice told me a decision had already been made. We were discharged from the hospital 2 days later. I should have been happy, bringing home our baby, starting our little family, beginning a new chapter. Instead, my stomach twisted the entire drive home because I knew what waited for me there. The second Ethan unlocked the front door, I smelled it. Alcohol, perfume, food. The house looked like a wedding venue after everyone left. Crushed cups, cake frosting on the kitchen counter, dirty dishes stacked in the sink, footprints across my hardwood floor. Someone had moved my nursery rocking chair downstairs for extra seating. My nursery chair, the one I spent weeks picking out. I stood there frozen, holding Olivia while Ethan walked slowly through the living room. His expression got darker with every step. Beer bottles on the patio, wine stains on the couch, glitter decorations taped onto family photos. Then he stopped near the dining table. What is this? I looked over. Someone had placed graduation gifts beside my baby shower presents, like the two events belonged together. Like my daughter's birth had become a scheduling inconvenience beside Lily's celebration. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe properly. Not from postpartum pain, from grief. Because this house used to feel safe, and now all I could see was proof that my family would invade even my most vulnerable moments if it benefited Lily. Ethan turned toward me carefully. Go upstairs with Olivia. But, please. I went. Not because I wanted to avoid it, because my body physically couldn't handle more stress. Upstairs, I sat in the nursery holding Olivia while muffled cabinet doors slammed downstairs. I heard trash bags opening, furniture moving, the vacuum turning on. Then silence. About 20 minutes later, Ethan came upstairs. His face looked calm again. Too calm. Everything's cleaned. I blinked at him. Already, I threw everything away. Everything. All the decorations, all the leftovers, all the party favors, gone. And for some reason that made me emotional all over again. Because Ethan wasn't just cleaning the house. He was protecting the space, protecting me, protecting our daughter. I whispered, they ruined coming home with our baby. He sat beside me carefully. No, he said softly. They ruined their place in it. That sentence stayed with me for years. Because he was right. My daughter would never remember that day. But my parents would. And one day they'd realize they traded being present at their granddaughter's birth for balloons and sheet cake. 3 hours later, Mom arrived. No warning, no apology. She walked into my house carrying flower arrangements like nothing happened. Oh good, you're home. I stared at her. Really stared. Trying to understand how someone could behave this normally after violating every boundary I set. She walked toward Olivia immediately. Let me see my grandbaby. I stepped backward instinctively. Mom froze. The room changed instantly. Not loudly, not dramatically, just colder. You can't just walk in here, I said quietly. Her smile faltered. What? You ignored me. You threw a party here while I was in labor. Mom sighed immediately. Oh my God, are we still doing this? Doing this. Like my hurt was performance art. I felt Ethan move beside me. Not aggressive, protective. Mom noticed too. Her expression sharpened. You've turned her against her own family. There it was again. Anytime someone finally supported me, my parents treated it like manipulation, because healthy love felt threatening to people who relied on guilt. Ethan spoke calmly. No one turned Ava against anybody. Mom crossed her arms. So we're villains now because we attended Lily's graduation? No, I whispered. You're villains because you abandoned your daughter during childbirth and then used her house for a party she explicitly canceled. Mom's face hardened instantly. You are being unbelievably dramatic. And honestly, something strange happened then. For the first time in my life, that sentence stopped working on me. Maybe motherhood changed something. Maybe exhaustion stripped away my tolerance. Maybe watching Olivia sleep beside me rewired my understanding of love. But suddenly I could see my mother clearly. Not powerful, not emotionally superior, just selfish. A selfish woman who expected endless accommodation because nobody had ever forced her to face consequences. I looked at her directly. You need to leave. Her mouth fell open. Ava, leave. You can't seriously mean that. I do, Mom laughed once in disbelief. This is postpartum hormones talking. No, this was 30 years of emotional neglect finally reaching its expiration date. Ethan opened the front door silently. Mom stared between us. Then her eyes filled instantly with tears. And let me tell you something important. People like my mother weaponize tears masterfully. Because society automatically treats crying mothers like victims. You're really throwing me out after everything I've done for you? Everything she'd done for me. Interesting phrase. Because people who constantly remind you what they sacrificed usually want repayment more than connection. I held Olivia closer. What exactly did you do for me yesterday? Silence. Heavy silence. Then she snapped, Fine, choose your husband over your real family. And there it was, the sentence emotionally controlling parents always use eventually, as if love must be earned through loyalty to dysfunction, as if boundaries are betrayal, as if marriage somehow erased blood. I answered quietly, he was there when I needed family. Mom's face changed. Not sadness, humiliation. Because deep down, she knew it was true. Then she left, but not before saying one final thing at the door. Something I will never forget. She looked directly at Olivia and said, One day you'll understand how hard motherhood really is. Then she walked out. I stood there shaking afterward, because she still believed she was right. That's the terrifying part. Some parents damage their children so gradually and consistently that they truly stop recognizing cruelty altogether. Dad called that night. I almost didn't answer, but part of me still hoped he'd be different. He wasn't. Ava, your mother is hysterical. I stared at the dark nursery window. I just gave birth 2 days ago. That's not an excuse to disrespect your mother. There it was again. Not concern, not accountability, just obedience. I closed my eyes. You all abandoned me. We attended Lily's graduation. You hosted a party in my house after I said no. Dad immediately got defensive. You're acting like we committed a crime. No, I whispered. You acted like I didn't matter. That sentence finally made him quiet, because some truths are too accurate to argue against immediately. Then he tried another tactic. Guilt. Your mother barely slept planning that party. I almost laughed. There it was. The family pattern in one sentence. Mom's labor mattered. Mine didn't. Lily's celebration mattered. My childbirth didn't. Their effort mattered. My pain didn't. I asked quietly, Did either of you once ask how scared I was? Silence. Did either of you ask if I needed my mom? More silence. And suddenly, I realized something devastating. They genuinely never thought about it. Not because they hated me, because they were so conditioned to prioritizing Lily that my emotional needs literally stopped registering to them. That realization hurt more than anger would have. Dad finally sighed heavily. You've always been too sensitive. Sensitive. Another family favorite, because dismissive people love calling emotional injury sensitivity. I whispered. No, Dad. I was just the only one noticing. Then I hung up, and for the first time in my life, I blocked my parents' numbers. The next few weeks were strangely peaceful, painful, but peaceful. No guilt calls, no passive-aggressive texts, no pressure to apologize for being hurt. Just me, Ethan, Olivia, and quiet, real quiet, the kind where you finally hear your own thoughts again. And honestly, that silence terrified me at first, because when you grow up managing other people's emotions constantly, peace feels unnatural. I kept waiting for punishment, waiting for relatives to attack me, waiting for Mom to show up crying, waiting for Dad to demand reconciliation. Instead, nothing happened. And that hurt too, because part of me realized, if I disappeared emotionally, my family could continue just fine without me. Have you ever discovered your absence bothers people less than your boundaries do? That realization changes you permanently. 6 weeks postpartum, Aunt Carol showed up unexpectedly. Now, Aunt Carol was my mother's older sister, the neutral aunt, the peacemaker, the woman everyone used to pass messages through when conflict got ugly. She arrived carrying soup and awkward energy. I'm not here to fight, she said immediately. I led her inside carefully. Olivia slept upstairs while Ethan worked remotely in the office. Aunt Carol sat at the kitchen table looking uncomfortable. Your mother is devastated. I stirred my tea silently. She missed her granddaughter's birth. She regrets how things happened. No, I said calmly. She regrets consequences. Aunt Carol looked startled, probably because I'd never spoken that directly before. But motherhood stripped something out of me, the desperate need to soften every truth for other people's comfort. She keeps saying you overreacted, Aunt Carol admitted quietly. I nodded once. Of course she does. Then Aunt Carol said something unexpected. Something that changed everything. She also said, she thought you'd eventually give in like always. I froze. There it was, the truth. Not hidden, not sugar-coated. My entire family dynamic explained in one sentence. They expected compliance because I always sacrificed myself first. And honestly, that realization made me angrier than the graduation itself, because it meant my kindness had trained people to disrespect me. Aunt Carol looked at me sadly. You were the easy child, Ava. Easy child. That phrase broke my heart a little, because easy children usually aren't easy. They're just children who learned early that their needs create disappointment. And suddenly, I looked upstairs toward Olivia's nursery and thought, never. I will never let my daughter earn love through self-erasure. Never. 8 months passed before I saw my parents again. 8 quiet, beautiful, painful months. And honestly, those months changed me more than the previous 30 years combined. Because distance does something terrifying after growing up in dysfunction. It lets you see clearly, and once you see clearly, you can never fully unsee it again. My life became smaller in the best possible way. Morning feedings with Olivia, late night takeout with Ethan, walks around the neighborhood pushing a stroller while autumn leaves covered the sidewalks. Peace. Not perfect peace. There were still nights I cried unexpectedly while folding baby clothes. Still moments I picked up my phone wanting to call my mom before remembering she stopped feeling emotionally safe years ago. But overall, life felt lighter, like I'd spent my entire existence carrying invisible emotional weight I didn't realize could be set down. Then Thanksgiving happened, and everything cracked open again. It started with a voicemail from Dad. Not an apology, not accountability, a request. His voice sounded older somehow. Ava, your mother's having surgery next month. Nothing life-threatening, but she'll need help recovering for a while. I stared at the phone silently. Then came the sentence I knew was coming. Lily can't take time off work right now. Of course she couldn't, because somehow, even after everything, the responsibility still circled back to me. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because some family patterns become so predictable, they stop feeling real. I played the voicemail again for Ethan later that evening. He listened quietly while bouncing Olivia gently against his shoulder. When it ended, he looked at me carefully. What do you want to do? That question almost made me emotional, because healthy people ask what you want. Manipulative people ask what you owe. And growing up in my family meant I barely knew the difference anymore. I don't know, I admitted. That was the truth. Part of me wanted to ignore them forever. Part of me still wanted my parents back. Not the actual versions of them, the fantasy versions. The parents I kept hoping existed underneath all the favoritism. Ethan nodded slowly. Then don't rush yourself. Simple advice. Healthy advice. And somehow still unfamiliar to me. 3 days later, Lily called. First time since the graduation. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Her voice sounded softer immediately, almost nervous. Hey, not how's the baby? Not I'm sorry. Just hey. I waited. Then she sighed heavily. Mom's really upset. There it was. Even now, I was being contacted primarily to manage someone else's emotions. I leaned back against the couch while Olivia slept beside me. Did she tell you why I stopped talking to her? Silence. Then, she said you felt unsupported. Unsupported, interesting word choice. As though they forgot to bring snacks instead of abandoning me during childbirth. I asked quietly, were you ever going to apologize for what you said while I was in labor? Another silence. Longer this time. Then Lily said something that genuinely surprised me. I didn't think it sounded that bad at the time. That honesty hit harder than defensiveness would have. Because she wasn't lying. She genuinely grew up believing her milestones deserved priority over everyone else's pain. Not because she was evil, because our parents taught her that repeatedly. I rubbed my forehead tiredly. Lily, I was terrified. Her breathing changed slightly on the phone. Like maybe for the first time, she was imagining me as an actual human being instead of supporting cast in her life story. I know that now, she whispered. And honestly, that tiny sentence cracked something open inside me, because it was the first real acknowledgement anyone in my family had offered. Not justification, not guilt, not minimizing, just acknowledgement. I asked carefully, why are you really calling? She hesitated, then finally admitted, Dad's struggling. There it was, the real reason, not love. Need. Always need. Apparently Dad's business problems had gotten worse, The store barely survived after years of debt. Mom's surgery bills added pressure, and Lily had recently moved across the country for work. Suddenly, the dependable daughter they emotionally neglected for years became useful again. Funny how that works. Have you noticed people often rediscover your value the moment you stop giving them access? Because I have. That Sunday, I found Ethan fixing the backyard fence while Olivia sat nearby in her little baby swing. Golden afternoon sunlight covered everything softly. Normal, safe, peaceful. I stood there watching him quietly for a moment before speaking. They need help. Ethan leaned against the fence post slowly. And I hate that part of me still cares. His expression softened instantly. Of course you care. I looked down. Does that make me weak? He walked over immediately. No, he said gently. It makes you human. God. Do you know how healing it is when someone stops treating your emotions like flaws? Because my entire childhood taught me caring too much made me difficult. But Ethan never punished softness. He protected it. That difference changed me more than therapy ever could. I sat beside Olivia's swing while Ethan handed me a bottle of water. What if they never really change? He crouched beside me thoughtfully. Then you decide what access they deserve. Healthy people talk about access. Unhealthy people talk about obligation. That distinction became life-changing for me. 2 weeks later, Mom showed up at my door unexpectedly. Again, some habits never die. But this time, she looked different. Smaller somehow, not physically, emotionally, like life had finally forced her to sit with consequences she couldn't manipulate away. She stood there holding a gift bag awkwardly while snow fell lightly behind her. I brought Christmas presents for Olivia. I didn't move immediately, neither did she. Then quietly, my mother started crying. Not dramatic crying, not performance crying, real crying, the kind that comes from exhaustion instead of strategy. And honestly, that scared me more, because for the first time in my life, my mother looked vulnerable instead of emotionally controlling. I miss you, she whispered. Those 3 words nearly destroyed me, not because they fixed anything, because they were all I wanted growing up to feel missed, wanted, chosen. I let her inside, not because everything was forgiven, because healing sometimes begins with tiny openings instead of giant reconciliations. Mom sat on the couch clutching tissues while Olivia stared at her curiously from my lap. She looks like you did as a baby, Mom whispered. My chest hurt instantly, because suddenly I remembered things I tried hard to forget. Mom brushing my hair before kindergarten, Dad teaching me to ride a bike, family movie nights before Lily's achievements slowly became the center of everything. And that's the hardest part about complicated parents. They're rarely monsters all the time. If they were, walking away would feel easier. Mom looked around the living room quietly. You seem happy. I glanced toward the kitchen where Ethan cooked dinner while humming softly to Olivia. I am. Mom nodded slowly. Then came the sentence I never expected her to say. I think I spent so many years trying to make sure Lily never felt overlooked, that I stopped seeing you completely. Silence filled the room instantly, because there it was, the truth. Raw, ugly, finally spoken aloud. I swallowed hard. You really didn't notice? Mom covered her face briefly. No, she admitted quietly. I thought you were stronger, easier, less needy. Easy child. Again. That word followed me everywhere now, and suddenly I realized something devastating. My family didn't neglect me because I mattered less. They neglected me because I adapted better. I learned too early how to survive disappointment quietly, and people mistook that survival for invulnerability. Mom looked at Olivia again. I was wrong. 3 words. Simple, late, but real. And honestly, that mattered. Not enough to erase everything, but enough to crack the door open slightly. Over the next few months, contact returned slowly, carefully. Dad started calling occasionally, short conversations mostly about Olivia, awkward at first, then warmer. One afternoon, he admitted something I never expected to hear. When your mother said we should stay at the graduation, I knew we were making the wrong choice. I stared at the phone silently. Then why didn't you leave? Long pause. Then because keeping Lily happy had become easier than disappointing her. That sentence explained my entire childhood, not hatred, cowardice, emotional laziness disguised as peacekeeping. Dad sighed heavily. You were always the one we assumed would forgive us. And there it was again. The curse of being the understanding child. People stop seeing your limits because you survive pain too gracefully. I asked quietly. Did you ever think maybe I shouldn't always have to? Dad started crying then. Actual crying. Not manipulative, not dramatic, broken. And suddenly I realized something difficult. My parents weren't evil. They were flawed, emotionally immature people who kept making the easiest decision instead of the right one. And unfortunately, the easiest decision was usually sacrificing me. That realization didn't erase the damage, but it changed the shape of my anger. Because hatred is simpler than grief, and suddenly I wasn't furious anymore. I was sad, sad for younger me, sad for my parents, sad for the family we could have been if anyone had noticed the imbalance sooner. The real turning point happened on Olivia's first birthday. I almost didn't invite them. Honestly, I spent weeks debating it, because forgiveness sounds beautiful online until you remember the actual pain attached to it. But eventually, I said yes. Small gathering, just immediate family, nothing dramatic. Mom arrived early carrying homemade cupcakes shaped like tiny flowers. Dad brought a stuffed bear, bigger than Olivia herself, and Lily looked nervous the entire time. Like she finally understood she wasn't automatically entitled to closeness anymore. That mattered too, because accountability changes relationship dynamics permanently. At one point during the party, I walked into the kitchen and overheard Mom speaking quietly to Ethan, and what she said stopped me cold. "Thank you for protecting her when we didn't." Ethan answered gently, "She deserved better." Mom started crying softly again, and for the first time in my life, she didn't defend herself. No excuses, no guilt, no minimizing, just grief, real grief. And honestly, that's when forgiveness became possible. Not because they suddenly became perfect parents, but because they finally stopped pretending they already were. Please subscribe my YouTube channel before we move forward. Olivia turned 5 on a warm Saturday afternoon in June. The backyard was covered in pastel balloons and tiny paper butterflies taped to the fence. Ethan stood by the grill laughing with Dad. Mom helped Olivia open presents at the patio table, and Lily was kneeling in the grass, letting my daughter aggressively decorate her with sidewalk chalk. At one point, Olivia drew a crooked purple circle on Lily's forehead and announced, "Now you're a princess donut." And Lily just laughed, really laughed. No competition, no spotlight, no tension, just family, real family, the kind I used to think only existed in movies. I stood in the kitchen doorway watching everything quietly while sunlight spilled across the yard. And honestly, if you had shown this scene to me the night I gave birth, I would never have believed you. Because back then I thought relationships only had two endings: stay hurt forever, or pretend nothing happened. I didn't know there was a third option: change, slow, awkward, imperfect change. That doesn't mean everything magically healed overnight. It didn't. There were uncomfortable conversations, painful silences, old habits, relapses. The first year after reconnecting was honestly messy. Mom still had moments where she prioritized Lily automatically without realizing it. Dad still avoided conflict too much. And sometimes I'd get irrationally angry over tiny things because old wounds don't disappear just because people apologize. Healing isn't linear, it's exhausting. And sometimes forgiveness feels less like peace and more like choosing not to reopen the same wound every morning. But something important had changed. They listened now. That was new. For example, one Christmas, Mom accidentally spent 3 times more on Lily's gift than mine again. Not intentionally, just habit. Old wiring. You know what happened next? I told her. Calmly. No swallowing it, no pretending not to care. And instead of calling me dramatic, Mom cried and apologized immediately. Then she fixed it. That sounds small, but if you grew up in a family where your feelings were constantly minimized, you understand how massive that difference is. Because accountability builds safety, and safety rebuilds relationships. Slowly. A year later, Dad sold the business, retired earlier than planned. And strangely enough, losing the store made him softer, less stressed, less emotionally absent. One evening, he sat beside me on the porch while Olivia chased fireflies in the yard. "You know what my biggest regret is?" he asked quietly. I looked over, he stared out at the grass for a long moment before answering himself. "I thought being a good provider mattered more than being emotionally present." That sentence hit hard, because I think a lot of parents from his generation believed that. Love meant sacrifice. Work, bills paid, not emotional attunement, not vulnerability, not noticing which child quietly stopped asking for help because she learned nobody would come. Dad rubbed his hands together slowly. "I didn't realize how lonely you were." I looked down at my coffee. then finally admitted something I'd never said out loud before. I stopped expecting anyone to choose me. Dad's face crumpled instantly. And honestly, that was the moment I fully forgave him. Not because pain disappeared, because he finally understood it. Really understood it. You can survive a lot of childhood hurt when someone finally looks at it honestly instead of defending themselves from it. As for Lily, that relationship took the longest. Not because she was cruel, because she genuinely didn't know who she was outside of being prioritized. Favoritism damages all the children involved. People forget that. The neglected child learns self-erasure. The favored child learns entitlement without realizing it. Neither escapes untouched. A few years after Olivia's birth, Lily admitted something during a late-night conversation that changed everything between us. I used to think you secretly hated me. I stared at her. What? She twisted her wine glass nervously. Mom and Dad always said you were jealous whenever you got upset. God, there it was again. The family narrative, not pain, jealousy, not neglect, sensitivity. I shook my head slowly. Lily, I never wanted your achievements. Then what did you want? And honestly, the answer came out before I could soften it. I just wanted someone to care when I was hurting too. Silence filled the room. Then my sister started crying. Real crying. Ugly crying. I didn't know, she whispered. And maybe some people won't understand this, but I believed her. Because children trust the emotional reality parents create for them. Lily wasn't born selfish. She was raised inside a system where her needs consistently came first. And when everyone around you treats something as normal, you stop questioning it. That conversation changed us. Not instantly, but permanently. For the first time in our lives, we stopped relating to each other as competitors for emotional resources. We became sisters. Actual sisters. When Olivia was 7, she asked me a question that nearly broke my heart. We were baking cookies together while rain tapped softly against the kitchen windows. She looked up suddenly and asked, Mama, why do Grandma and Grandpa hug you so much now? Kids notice everything. Even healing. I smiled a little. They're learning. Olivia tilted her head. Learning what? How do you explain generational dysfunction to a child making dinosaur-shaped cookies? I brushed flour off her nose gently. That sometimes people don't realize they hurt someone until much later. She thought about that seriously, then asked, Did they hurt you? I froze for half a second. Because this was the moment. The moment every cycle-breaking parent eventually faces. Do you lie to protect the adults, or tell the truth carefully enough to protect the child? I chose honesty. Yes, I said softly. A little. Olivia frowned immediately. Then why do you still love them? And God, what a question. I looked toward the living room where Mom sat helping Ethan wrap birthday gifts. Dad was asleep in the recliner with the TV remote balanced on his chest. Normal, peaceful, human. Then I looked back at my daughter. Because people can hurt you and still love you, I said carefully. But loving someone doesn't mean you let them keep hurting you. Olivia considered this deeply in the serious way children do. Then nodded once like she understood more than I expected. Maybe she did. Kids raised around emotional honesty usually do. A month before my 35th birthday, Mom invited me out to lunch. Just us. No drama, no agenda. Halfway through the meal, she reached into her purse and handed me something folded carefully inside an envelope. I opened it slowly. It was a hospital bracelet. Mine. From the day Olivia was born. I stared at it in confusion. Mom's eyes filled. The nurse gave it to me later, she whispered. What? She said. You left it behind. I looked up sharply. Mom wiped her eyes. I kept it because I couldn't stop thinking about where I should have been that day. The restaurant went blurry instantly through tears. Mom continued shakily. I replayed it for years, Ava. You in labor asking for your mother while I worried about table decorations and graduation photos. I couldn't speak. I would give anything to redo that day. And for the first time, I believed her completely. Not because she said the perfect thing, because regret had finally stripped all defensiveness away. She wasn't protecting her image anymore. She was mourning the memory too. I reached across the table slowly and held her hand. And honestly, that moment healed something in both of us. Not everything, but something important. A few weeks ago, Olivia came home from school upset because another little girl excluded her during recess. She crawled into my lap, crying softly while I rubbed her back. And suddenly, I had this overwhelming realization. My daughter will never spend 30 years wondering whether she deserves emotional care. Never, because the cycle stopped with me. That's the real victory. Not revenge, not estrangement, not proving who was right. Safety, emotional safety. The kind children carry into adulthood without even realizing how valuable it is. Later that night, after Olivia fell asleep, Ethan wrapped his arms around me in the kitchen while I washed dishes. You okay? He asked softly. I leaned back against him. Yeah. Then, after a pause, I whispered, Thank you for showing me what love was supposed to feel like. He kissed the side of my head gently, and I meant it, because sometimes healing doesn't start with family. Sometimes it starts with one person looking at your pain and refusing to call it dramatic. One person who stays, protects, listens, chooses you consistently until your nervous system slowly believes you're worth choosing. That kind of love changes everything. If you've listened this far, I want to ask you something. Were you the easy child, too? The one who adapted quietly? The one expected to forgive first? The one praised for needing less while secretly hurting more? Because if you were, I need you to hear this. Being low maintenance is not the same thing as being less deserving of love. And boundaries are not cruelty. Sometimes they are the only thing strong enough to save a relationship before resentment destroys it completely. My parents hurt me deeply. That's true. But another truth also exists beside it. People can change when they finally confront what their choices cost. Not everyone will. Some never do. But some families break open instead of breaking apart. Mine almost didn't survive. And honestly, part of me still grieves the years we lost. But when I watch my mother reading bedtime stories to Olivia now, or Dad teaching her how to ride a bike, or Lily showing up to every dance recital with flowers bigger than her head, I realize something important. Healing doesn't erase the past. It gives the future a different ending.